through West Virginia?
No.
Man, it's kind of scary, to be honest with you. It is.
Yeah.
It really is like driving through the mountain. Have you ever watched that documentary about that tap dancer, the wild and wonderful
whites?
Yeah, the whites. Yeah,
the whites of West Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. See, they're from the Appalachian Mountains, which if you're from there, they call it Appalachia. I live in the Appalachian Mountains. That's where I live.
Wow.
Right. We have a lot of those people here in Pennsylvania. See, that's the thing. People don't realize Pennsylvania is like that. It's all when you go through there's a lot of different mountain ranges. You have like Blue Ridge and whatever. You have all these different kind of mountain ranges, but the Appalachian, like you have the AT, which is the Appalachian Trail, and it goes from Georgia all the way up to Maine. Mm. And you have people that hike it. Well, when you're going through that, you have those people, man.
Yeah,
you're gonna run into.
It really is still. It's like
crazy mountain people.
It's a place that is still in the past almost. Like there's still some.
Yeah.
Like I watched that documentary, "The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia," or whatever the hell it was called, and those people are legitimately still outlaws. I mean, they're crazy.
It has Hank 3 in it too.
Yeah. And but they're crazy.
Dudes.
But those people up there in the mountains are just crazy as shit. I mean, like just taking shotguns over to their uncle's house and shooting him for sleeping with his girlfriend. I don't know, whatever. Just they'll take a gun to you.
What happens is that you got to remember. All right, I know people. This is more about Western culture, the show should be, but, of course, we're going to talk about other things. What happens is when you live in a bubble, all right, and you don't get out and you don't visit other places and you don't really get, an education and stuff like that, you're going to be subjected to the same, stuff that people were doing years ago. And that happened. Like when these people came over from England or Ireland or whatever, They were living in farms, farmland and stuff there. They came over and they didn't evolve past that shit that they were doing then, which was acceptable at some point. And then over here, we're like, no, we can't act like that. But up in the mountains where they are, it's like, fuck you, you come up here, you're dead. And they just have the same values and nothing's changed. Nothing's changed, Nate.
I know, man. I know.
Way of living.
It's they're stuck in a time capsule up there in the mountains of West Virginia. And it's not the only place either. I'm from Oklahoma, and down there in East Oklahoma, in the Ozarks, and in Missouri and Arkansas down there, they still live like they're living on the land, and they're hunting and fishing, and I mean that's what they do. They might.
I like all that stuff too, man.
And I do too. I mean, it's not necessarily for me because I lived down there my whole life, and when after I went to the military, I got out of the Marine Corps after 10 years, and I had choices. I was like, I'm going to move back to Oklahoma, back there to Mulberry Holler where I'm from, and now I'm not even joking. That's what it's called, Mulberry Holler in Adair County. I'm going to go back to the holler, and I'm going to live like a goddamn country boy. Or I'm gonna move to a city, which is what was in my heart. I was like, I need to be close to a city because I like that. I like being around a lot of people and buildings. I like, I just like being in a place where I have a lot of entertainment options available. Because as much as I like, just sitting out in my front yard in Oklahoma and starting a fire, and sitting there around the fire and drinking some beers and playing my guitar. It's nice to have those options. I don't live in the city of Kansas City. I live outside the city of Kansas City, but I'm close enough to where, like, if I wanted to go see Eric Church in concert, who's going to be here this weekend.
But where you live is also like hugely populated too. For that
it is
for that state. It's crazy though because I guess some people like I grew up in the city But I also we had the Pocono Mountains, and they had the Pocono Raceway up there and stuff. I don't know if you're like a NASCAR guy or if you're into like racing and stuff like that. But they have the Pocono Raceway up there, and but going to you went two places when you grew up in Philly for vacation. You usually went to Wildwood, New Jersey. Okay, the beach and everything.
Right.
or you went up the mountains. That's what it was called, going up the mountains. And we had land up there. My grandfather had land at one place. My mom and dad had land at another one, and that's where we spent our summers. So we spent our summers fishing and doing all that stuff. Living in the mountains.
Right.
And that's where my family wanted to go. They wanted to go back to the mountains because, see, what happened was my family originally, when they came over from Ireland, they came here and they lived in the mountains for a long time. Then they moved down to Philly. And then eventually my mom was like, she heard all these stories about how her grandmother lived. So she moved back up. And that's, I'm up here now because it's a lot cheaper. But
yeah, boy,
it's the thinking's a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
It's a culture shock for me. But the way people think up here is a lot different, man.
I'd like to talk about how me and you both came to really because obviously, you being born in Philly, there had to be some point in your life where you discovered sort of Western culture, Western films, and decided to have, hey man, this is awesome. I'd like to learn more about this, and what eventually would bring you to want to do this show with me about Western culture and stuff like that. I want to discuss those things with you, but right now we're going to take our first real quick break, and we're going to be right back about 1 minute. So hang tight.
All right, guys, let's take a minute to talk about Cisco's Gallery, home of the rare and exceptional. Stepping into Cisco's is like stepping into a time machine and coming out in the Old West. Whether it's vintage art, genuine antiques, or period-perfect furnishings, Cisco's is the place to be. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're looking for a beautiful historic piece for your home, office, or anywhere else. You need to get on your horse and head to Cisco's Gallery at 220 North 4th Street in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Or, you can drive because it's the 21st century. Their 13,000 square foot megastores packed floor to ceiling with fine art, jewelry, lodge furnishings, and sporting goods in both American Indian and country and Western motifs. Not in Idaho? No problem. You could check out over 4,500 items in stock at ciscosgallery.com. That's CISCOS gallery.com. Cisco's Gallery. It's the greatest collection of Western art and artifacts available for sale in the entire world.
All right. Well, I wanted to mention that one of the things that we're going to do on the show, one of the regular sort of segments that we're going to have is every week we're going to discuss a different. We're going to review and discuss a different Western film, and what we'll do is at the end of every show, at the end of this show, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna give old Ox over there a few movie selection suggestions, 3 of them, as a matter of fact. They're all on Netflix, and we'll decide what movie we're gonna watch during this week before we do the show next week, and we give it a thorough once over, whether we liked it, whether we didn't, what we thought of it, just a regular, and we're gonna rate it at the end. So that'll be at the end of this show. But the reason I'm talking about that is because it kind of feeds into the way I kind of fell in love with the Western culture and Western film and lore and all that stuff. Is when I was a kid, maybe 3rd, 4th grade, living in Mulberry Holler in Oklahoma. When like in the summertime, when my aunt and uncle, who I was living with at the time, when they go to work, they would drop me off over at my grandma's house. Well, we called her Meemaw and Peepaw, and that's my Meemaw would babysit me, and her idea of babysitting was sit me in front of the TV and turn on John Wayne movies, and she had every damn John Wayne movie you could ever think of. So I've seen just about every John Wayne movie you could ever think of. So that was kind of my introduction. Most kids my age were sitting around watching cartoons, watching Looney Tunes, doing whatever. I'm 33 years old, by the way. So it was back when I was that young, it was all Looney Tunes. And instead of watching Looney Tunes, I was sitting around watching The Duke. That's how I was babysat. And I wasn't. it wasn't. I mean, it was something I looked forward to, like every day, going to my Meemaw's house and watching John Wayne movies. You know, Sons of Katie Elder and El Dorado and True Grit and all those great old John Wayne movies. And I sat there and watch them, and that was my first sort of introduction to the West, and just me being like, man, I need a 6-gun, you know, I need a holster,
Yeah.
I need a cowboy hat, you know, and then to top it off, you know, to the icing on the cake was one day I came back from being babysat by my Meemaw, and I came back home to my aunt and uncle's house, and they had rented a movie, and I was also way into horror movies back then at that time, and this movie was called Tombstone, and they told me the name of the movie, but that was it, and I was like, wow, you guys are gonna let me watch this movie? You know, I was like, because it sounds like something about zombies. I was like, this is great. You know, I was so excited because my aunt and uncle was gonna let me watch Tombstone with them. And of course, Tombstone ended up being Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer and Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton reenacting the events that...
Now, you guys can't see this, but he just looked up at his wall, looking at his Tombstone poster.
I do have a big Tombstone poster right here next to me. But of course, it's those actors reenacting the events that took place in Tombstone, Arizona in the 1800s with playing, you know, Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and, you know, the shooting at the OK Corral and the basically the war that they had against the Cowboys, the gang, and it was, I mean, from the first time I watched it, you know, probably in 4th grade at the time, I was like, this is amazing. I was like, this, and to this day, I mean, 30 years later, I'm like, it's got to be the best movie I've ever seen in my life, and to this day, to this day, I've probably seen the movie 40 times. I'm not even exaggerating. I watch it probably 3 or 4 times a year.
It is a great show, and it's also you were saying, you know, like the name Tombstone. It's a lot better than what originally what the town was going to be called.
What's that?
You know that, right? Goose Flats.
Are you being serious?
Yes, I am. Which is, I mean, it would be great, like if I just made that up, you know, like just fucking with you. No, like, no,
I was prepared for it. I was prepared for a joke.
Yeah, no, it really was called Goose Flats.
Did you see the link I posted in the show notes? I posted a link about one of the accounts. One of the accounts that we follow on Twitter is True West Magazine, and I don't know how this came about, but it just recently, this was posted 2 days ago, Tombstone officials have decided to add another nickname to, I guess this is one of the nicknames, the town too tough to die is what they call Tombstone. But now they're also calling it America's Second Amendment City, making note of the number of people who carry guns there still to this day. Because, you know, because their mayor, Dusty Escapule, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but he says, he was quoted as saying Tombstone became famous because of their guns, and I guess they're still that way today. I mean, just people carrying guns everywhere.
Which is hilarious because they're also the town though that didn't allow people to carry.
Yeah.
Guns
they were like the one town who was like, all right, well, you know, there's that famous scene from the movie. We're not saying you can't carry a gun. We're just saying you can't carry a gun in town.
Right, and it's funny. One of the comments from the link, I just opened it up, and it says, "Ironic, by celebrating open carry, the town seems to be siding with the Clanton gang instead of its hero Wyatt Earp." And in the picture, I'm going to give a shout out to this guy. He's an older gentleman named David Jessup, and he's rocking his cowboy hat. And you know what that makes me think is that there still are people that do side with Wyatt Earp.
Yeah,
and, there's people as good.
Yeah, there's probably people down there that are still probably. I mean, their grandparents were involved in that shit, and maybe even killed by it or something. You know, they probably still got a pebble in their boot about it. You know what I'm saying?
You know, it's funny that you bring that up about grandparents, great grandparents, and so on and so forth. So my family lived in this. I live in a a town right now called Pottsville. It's actually a city. It's technically a city, but it's a town. Come on.
Yeah.
And they I live right behind the Yingling Brewery. If you're familiar with Yingling Lager.
Yeah.
Right, so I live right behind the brewery. I mean, you go outside, you smell the hops, and you smell everything. You know, I live here. There's also a drink that's native. Well, I think it's called like Krupsnika or something weird like that. It was like a Polish or Lithuanian drink, but it became very popular here, and it's a staple of this area.